Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of the Callisto Protocol. I played on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the Series S, Xbox One, PS4, PS5, and PC. So let's get into the story. You play as Jacob Lee, a pilot. You and your partner are making what appears to be a fairly normal cargo run when you guys are jacked by what you think are terrorists. On your way to Black Iron Prison, which is basically an entire prison planet, well, those terrorists cause you to crash, and for whatever reason, they lock you up in prison. Fortunately, you're not there for too long because crazy mutant type things start basically a riot, but it's not really a riot because they're just attacking everything and everyone, and fortunately for you, an inmate helps you escape. You and he formulate a plan to get out of there, and well, then things get weird, and there starts to seem like there might be more going on. Which is going to lead me to what was going to originally be a complaint about the game, and that is that it didn't feel like there was a lot of story. I mean, you get 60% of the way through this game before the story really kicks in, more than 60 probably, which I didn't like at first because I was like, what the fuck's going on? Why is there no story? But then when it kicks in, it kind of clicked in my brain. If you're trapped on a prison planet, you're wrongfully imprisoned, and somebody's willing to help you escape, you're just gonna try and escape. You don't really care what's going on, where these mutant things came from. You just want to get the hell out of there. When the plot thickens the way it does in the game, it clicked in my brain. I was like, oh, now it makes sense why your character suddenly cares about what's going on. So I'm going to say I actually ended up enjoying that. It was a bit torturous at first, but then it wound up being kind of a cool element. Now let's get into the audio, and the first thing I'm going to say is the voiceover work is really, really good in this game. I think everyone just knocks it out of the park. I think they captured everyone incredibly well. As for the music, I think the music is very well done. I like the music in this game. I think it works very well with everything that's going on at all points in time. And as for the sound effects, I think the sound effects are also very well done, and they work, but this game does have a slight problem, and the sound effects don't work for that. And that slight problem being what I'm going to address now in the gameplay mechanics and whatnot section is that this is not a survival horror game. This is a survival sci-fi action game, I guess? So to kind of go back to the audio, while there's a bunch of sound effects and they're all very well done and they help with the atmosphere, this game just fails to be a horror game in my opinion. And while the sound effects are very good and sound effects are very key in horror games, this just isn't a horror game and the sound effects don't make it scary. But back into that, this game does have a lot of survival horror mechanics, limited resources, limited ability to carry resources. So limited ammo, not so limited healing items, and I will say, once you get a hang of the combat, healing items not a big deal, because you're either going to die before you get a chance to heal, or you're going to survive and get to loot the corpses and get healing there. Which, let's get into those combat mechanics. There are quite a few guns in this game, but you don't really use guns too often. You're generally more in melee situations. This is a more melee focused game. I mean, you can shoot the enemies, but early on you're not getting enough ammo to make that an effective strategy, so it builds in you as the player a reliance on melee. The dodging mechanics in this game are a little weird and they don't always work. They're weird because the way they do the tutorial for them is way too cinematic and it doesn't do the best job explaining in my opinion. Or maybe I just needed to pay closer attention. I don't know. Either way, once I started getting into combat at first, I was just getting my ass beat and then it kind of clicked in my brain. But I will say, there were times where I definitely dodged and got murdered all the same by bosses. So that was very frustrating, and there were times where my character's doing the dodge mechanic and for whatever reason gets hit anyways, and when you're in the dodge mechanic, it dodges almost guaranteedly. I mean, pretty much it's supposed to be guaranteedly. There is a good amount of exploration to find items and things to upgrade your weapons. There is no suit to upgrade, which I found a little disappointing, and I do think this game could use a real boost in the user interface, specifically how you interact with the world and find your way around the world, because it definitely does that thing where you're trying to explore to find, loot essentially, but oops, you actually went into the next area, you don't know you're going into the next area until it's too late kind of thing. But there are definitely things that I feel hold it back from being as good as it could be. Starting with, your inventory is so heavily limited until you're over 60% of the way through the game, and that's very frustrating. Because you may collect a bunch of items that you can trade in and, you know, get more money so that you can get better upgrades, but you're so limited that there were a ton that I wasn't able to pick up. And that got frustrating after a while. Also, one thing the game does that I found very annoying, and it's not just this game, it's a lot of games, impatient NPCs. You're trying to get shit so you can upgrade yourself and get further in the game, and the NPCs are just bitching at you constantly. And this game definitely suffers from that, honestly, in one of the worst ways that I've ever heard. Like, they're very persistent and very annoying. And then last but not least, and this is the biggest thing that I have to bitch about in this game, there's no New Game Plus right now. I know it's launching sometime in February, but I don't give a shit because that's February. I'm playing it now. I'd like to replay it and, you know, pimp out all the gear, buy all the stuff that I didn't buy. That not being in there is very obnoxious to me because this is very much one of those games where going through New Game Plus and getting all the stuff and upgrading all the stuff would be so much fun. Now let's get into the controls, and overall I found the controls to be responsive. I found the aiming to work well. It's not perfect. And my real problem with the game was, like I said, the dodging mechanics, but I feel like that's more of a gameplay issue in this situation because my character would try and dodge, but the game would just be like, nah, fuck you. For the most part, I felt the controls did what I wanted when I wanted. Now let's get into the graphics and visuals, and this is a beautiful game. Just really a fantastic game, truly next-gen looking. All the characters, the hyper-realism that they're going for, they definitely nail. I mean, the motion capture, the performances, the faces, all of it is so well done. These characters look very real. The designs of the outfits are fantastic. When you're in your prison stuff, you look proper prisoner, and you get to see some other prisoners and how they've like kind of modified theirs, and it's well done. The detail in there is cool and unique to them. But then when you have your spacesuit type stuff, like that is a really cool design. It's like an armor spacesuit combination. I think it works incredibly well. It looks awesome. The creatures are well designed. They didn't necessarily strike terror into my heart, but I think they are good, they are alien, they do fit very well with the story, and they're well designed, and they're not exactly pleasant to look at. This team being built out of visceral employees, you do get a lot of gruesome death animations. I think they did an awesome job with that, although some of them do get a little repetitive, I will say that, but they're good, they're well done. As for the world, I think they put plenty of detail into everything, to put it simply. When you're in a more creature-infested area, seeing that is sufficient. It fits with like the idea of this stuff taking over the prison, taking over the facility. When the riot is going on, it looks very much like a prison riot was occurring. I just think they did a good job breathing life into that world. But again, I just didn't find it scary. There's a good atmosphere there, but it's not necessarily a frightening atmosphere. Like, there are situations where you're sitting there and you're like, I should be scared, but I'm not. Like, looking at it objectively, if you didn't know what was going on, you'd be like, that's probably a scary situation. So to get into the wrap-up, why I didn't find it scary is this game just hits you with everything immediately. The creatures are introduced immediately. There's no tension. They don't build up to it. So I feel like that's why this game doesn't land on the horror side. It doesn't instill fright in me. It doesn't shock me. It didn't disgust me, which those are the three like elements of horror according to the definition. And it just doesn't hit any of those. And it's because it really is a much more action-oriented game. It doesn't take the time to slow down and build tension. So that's why I will knock it for not being horror. The other thing I want to say, and this is not really a complaint against the game, this is a complaint against the developers and publishers, and that is, first off, this game is pretty damn short. You can beat it in a weekend. If you really hunkered down and wanted to, you could probably beat it in a day. But it's a full price game, it's fairly short, it doesn't have New Game Plus, and the story doesn't kick in until you're very far in the game. So them not releasing New Game Plus doesn't make any sense to me immediately, like at launch, but then making you pay for more story DLC when it's already such a short game and all these other things, I feel is kind of a fucked up move. Now that being said, I did enjoy the game, but because New Game Plus isn't there yet, I would say wait on this game until like February when it is there. You will get your maximum play value out of this game later. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me what's your favorite sci-fi game? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.